Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathira. Fama badu, my dear brothers and sisters, Alhamdulillah, we are on the ninth of the series of lectures and khutab on the leadership style of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It is also today the 31st of December 2021, which is the last day in this month, and tomorrow we go into the new year, and therefore it is, I think, very important, appropriate that we remind ourselves about that extremely critical quality of the leadership of Rasulullah, which I can call his signature quality, and that is his forgiveness, his willingness to forgive, his big heart, the rahmah, the mercy in his heart. My brothers and sisters, I remind myself and you that there are two ways to defeat enemies. The first is what the world has always done since human beings inhabited the earth. And the second one is what Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. The first way at best eliminates some of the enemies for some of the time, but strengthens enmity. Nobody ever eliminated all enemies, so some will always remain. And those who remain actually become even stronger enemies and even more committed to your destruction. The other way, which is the way of Rasulullah, eliminates enmity itself. The first way, therefore, is to eliminate enemies, and the second way is to eliminate enmity. Rasulullah, his conduct when he entered Makkah as its conqueror is an example for all humanity for all time of personal humility, a big heart, and mercy. The Quraysh, who had tormented him and driven him from his home, who were directly and indirectly responsible for the deaths of those he loved the most, his uncles, his wife, his daughter, who had caused him immense physical and emotional pain, were finally at his mercy. What could he have done? He could have done what was traditional and what was the norm of the time, which is to kill the men and to take the women and children as slaves. And of course confiscate all their property and enrich his own followers. This is what every conqueror worth the name had done and used to do, and may Allah forgive us, they do that till today. But what did he do? He forgave them all. He forgave them all. He announced a general amnesty and that there would be no revenge taken. An age-old custom among the Arab tribes who looted and killed, and they took the women and children as slaves. This is what people expected to see in Makkah also. People were shocked and astounded. They couldn't believe their eyes and ears. They hid in their homes at first, fully expecting the victorious Muslim soldiers to come rampaging, break into their houses, into the homes, to loot and pillage. This is what victorious forces do. But nothing happened. Eventually, Hind bin Utbah, the wife of Abu Sufyan, later both became Muslims, radiallahu anhuma, a woman who was a bitter enemy of Rasulullah and who was responsible for the mutilation of the body of his uncle Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib radiallahu anhu, in the Battle of Uhud after he was killed by Wahshi, an incident that caused untold suffering to Rasulullah. She left her home to see what was happening. And what did she see? She saw Rasulullah and his companions, the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in, praying around the Kaaba and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his help and mercy and thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his help, for their victory. It is true that as the conqueror, Rasulullah could have taken revenge. But that would have opened new wounds, which would have set off a new series of conflicts, all resulting in delay or defeat of his real mission, the spreading of his message. By forgiving those who had wronged him, he sent a powerful message that the mission was above all personal considerations and put those who had wronged him in his debt. Instead of fighting him or hating him, they were now grateful to him and wanted to please him. At one stroke, he laid to rest all future potential conflicts among his followers, without which his mission would have failed. The leader must be prepared to sacrifice his personal benefits for the sake of the goal and must be prepared to set a personal example in this respect. It is only when the followers see the behavior of the leader that they will follow suit. The result will be the success of the mission. Forgiveness is the foundation of this success because the cause is and must always be greater than personal emotions. Perhaps the best and most poignant incident that illustrates Rasulullah's commitment to the cause and his willingness to sacrifice his personal emotions for the sake of the cause was his treatment of the man who killed Sayyidina Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib radiallahu anhu, his beloved uncle and great supporter. Out of the 70 shuhada at Uhud, Al-Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib was given the title of Sayyidu Shuhada. Two of the Tabi'un visited Al-Wahshi radiallahu anhu, who was old at the time, and asked him to tell them the story of how he killed Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib radiallahu anhu. Wahshi said, "Shall I tell you just as I told the story to Rasoolullahﷺ when he asked me about it?" He said, "I was a slave of Jubair bin Mut'im, whose uncle was Tu'ima bin Udaybi, who was killed in Badr. When the Quraysh went forth to Uhud, Jubair told me, if you kill Hamza, Muhammad ﷺ's uncle, radiallahu anhu, in retaliation for my uncle, then you will be a free man." Al-Wahshi radiallahu anhu said, "I am Abyssinian, and like my countrymen, I am good at throwing the spear. And I rarely miss with it. When the armies met in battle, I went forth looking for Hamza radiallahu anhu to lie in wait for him. I found him right in the midst of the fray, like an enormous camel, striking out viciously at our men with his sword. Nothing could withstand him. I made use of bushes and rocks to get close to him, but Sibah bin Abdul Uzza got to him before me. Hamza called out to him. He said, 'Come over here, O son of a woman who does circumcisions.' He said he then struck a blow so fast that it seemed to miss the head of Sibah bin Abdul Uzza. But then his head flew off, and so I knew that he had not missed." Wahshi radiallahu anhu said, "I aimed my spear carefully and when sure of it, threw my spear, which hit the body of Hamza radiallahu anhu below the navel and emerged between his legs. He tried to move towards me, but was overcome. The wound was too massive, and he fell." Al-Wahshi said, "I did not even have the courage to go close to him even then. I waited for him to die, and I left the spear there until he died. And then I retrieved my spear, and I went back to my camp. I had no business with anyone except Hamza, who I killed, only to gain my freedom." Rasulullah heard of the death of his uncle, and he was devastated by it. It was one of the saddest moments in the life of Rasulullah. He went to see the body of his uncle. When he saw him, his stomach had been opened and his insides were pulled out. The man who took him there said, "This is not how we found him. He has been mutilated. This was because Hind bin Utbah had sworn to eat his liver, and she ordered that his liver be pulled out." This appearance and violence to him after death only added to the grief of Rasulullah, and he wept profusely. Wahshi radiallahu anhu said, "I went back to Makkah and stayed there until Rasulullah conquered Makkah, until Fatah Makkah. Then I fled to Taif and I stayed there until the delegation from Taif left to go to Rasulullah to accept Islam. Now I didn't know where to go. So I told people that I would go to maybe Syria or Yemen or some other country. Then someone said to me, look, he will not kill anybody who testifies to his religion. You accept his religion and nothing will happen to you. He will forgive you. So I went to Medina. He said I covered myself and I disguised myself. I went to Medina and I surprised him and testified to the truth of Islam before him. He accepted my Islam and then he said to me, are you Washi? I said, yes, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, sit down and tell me, how did you kill my uncle, Hamza? So I related this story as I related it to you. He's saying to the people who visited him. When I finished, he said, Washi, please don't come before me, because seeing your face, I am reminded of my uncle and my grief is renewed. Now go and fight in the path of Allah like you fought against Allah. So Washi said, I used to avoid Rasulullah wherever he may be so that he would not see me, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him to himself. Washi radiallahu anhu then joined the army that went to fight Musaylima al-Kadhdhab, the impostor, who had declared prophethood during the life of Rasulullah sallallahu. Rasulullah sallallahu met Musaylima and advised him against this, but he refused to accept the advice and he raised an army to attack Medina. Rasulullah sallallahu sent an army against him, which was victorious, and Musaylima al-Kadhdhab was killed. Washi described his role in this battle and said, I took my spear with which I had killed Hamza radiallahu anhu, and I saw Musaylima standing with his sword. I aimed my spear at him, and when I was sure of my aim, I threw it. At the same time, another Muslim attacked him from the other side with his sword. My spear struck him first, then the other Muslim struck him. And that man was Abu Dujana radiallahu anhu, who had been given the sword of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Washi radiallahu anhu said, if it was I who killed him, then with this spear I killed the best of men and the worst of men. There is a huge emphasis on forgiveness in Islam, both seeking it and forgiving others. Islam teaches us to be forgiving, and if someone sincerely asks for forgiveness, the wrong person should forgive him. Rasulullah said, whoever suffers an injury and forgives the person responsible, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise his status to a higher degree and remove one of his sins. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَجَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ سَيِّئَةٌ مِثْلُهَا فَمَنْ عَفَى وَأَصْلَحَ فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الظَّالِمِينَ. In Surah Al-Shura, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, the recompense, the reward of an evil is an evil like thereof. Meaning, if somebody commits a crime, then the punishment must suit the crime, must not be more than the crime. But whoever forgives and makes reconciliation, his reward is due from Allah. So instead of taking revenge if they reconciliate and if they forgive, then Allah said, I will reward them. Verily, He, Jalla Jalaluhu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like the zalimun, the oppressors. Abdullah ibn Amr radiallahu anhu reported that Rasulullah said, be merciful to others and you will receive mercy. Forgive others and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive you. And this is in Musnad Imam Ahmad. Abu Abdullah al-Khadali radiallahu anhu reported that he said, I asked Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, our mother, about the character of Rasulullah. Our mother Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha said, the Prophet was not indecent. He was not obscene. He would not shout in the markets, and he would not respond to an evil deed with an evil deed, but rather he would pardon and overlook. And this is in Sunan at-Tirmidhi. Another hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, where Rasulullah is reported to have said, it is not permissible for a man to forsake, meaning to be offended with and to reject his Muslim brother for more than 3 days, each of them turning away from the other when they meet. The better of them is the one who gives the greeting of salam first. In another hadith, Rasulullah said, it is not permissible to forsake your brother for more than 3 days. If you do that and you die, he said, then you will go to Jahannam. So forgiveness is so critically important. My brothers and sisters, forgiveness is so important in Islam that even in criminal law, Islam gives the victim or his heirs the option of forgiving the one who committed the crime against them. This is unique in the world. For example, in all other legal systems, if a murderer is found guilty of murder, then he is sentenced to the punishment for murder, whatever is that punishment in that country. In the much maligned Islamic Sharia, which everybody likes to call barbaric, the judge has three options, not one. He can levy the punishment, which in Islam is execution, life for a life, or the heirs of the victim can accept blood money, they can accept money as compensation in lieu of life. So instead of the person being executed, the person will buy his freedom by paying them a certain sum of money. Or they can simply choose to forgive the murderer and he walks free. Right? The murderer might have done something and then he might be very repentant and so on. The people say, okay, we forgive you. They can choose to simply forgive the murderer and he walks free. This is because even in the case of murder, forgiveness is more laudable and praiseworthy than revenge, even though you would be in your rights to claim revenge. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you forgive, that is better for you. It's clear from this that the cause must supersede personal likes and dislikes of the leader. Despite his own personal emotions and immense grief at the death of his beloved uncle and anger at his killer, Rasoolullahﷺ wanted the best for Wahshi. He wanted Wahshi to be on the right path and he forgave him and accepted his Islam. Therefore, it's essential for the leader not to allow his own likes and dislikes to harm the deen or the common benefit of humanity. Even when we have strong feelings about someone or something, these should not bind us to the past to the extent that we forget to see the greater good. It is almost as if these tests come to open doors. When we pass the test, the doors to the hearts of people open, and people admire the leader for his ability to put his own interest aside for the benefit of the cause. The test comes to ask, how much do you really want your cause to triumph? Our actions are the answer. This is easier said than done, of course, and is perhaps one of the strongest and clearest indicators of the commitment of the leader to the cause. To be able to be completely committed to the cause, yet keep the boundary between personal and the cause, is the balance which the leader must create. It is the emotional commitment of the leader which overshadows every other difficulty and enables him to continue to work for the cause in the face of every discouragement and setback. However, these very emotions must sometimes be sacrificed so that the interest of the cause can be furthered. That is a very great sacrifice. And perhaps it is for this reason that Rasulullah is reported to have said once, every prophet has been tortured and troubled by the people, and I have been tortured the most. However, he proved true to his covenant and worthy of the divine message that he was charged with. And his patience eventually won over even his worst enemies, won them over to his cause, to the cause of his message. My brother and sister, this is an amazing thing, and as I said, it's almost like the signature of Rasulullah, because he was sent, and Allah said about him, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And nowhere is this rahmah for the alameen, the rahmah for the mercy for all of creation. Nowhere is it more clearly manifested and more clearly exemplified than in the big-heartedness and the forgiveness and the magnanimity of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you from every harm that you know and that you don't know. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be your supporter and your helper, to stand up against all forms of oppression, no matter where you might be. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعليه وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.